You need to. Let's do this. All right. All right, here we go. We're going to go. Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And, we are, of course, going through all of the innovations, the creative approaches that we have available in front of us when it comes to what does an NFT mean? What does Web3 even look like? And oftentimes I feel like I will end up on the podcast interchanging Web3 and NFTs. And of course, they are not the same thing, but in many cases, the ways that we can integrate NFTs into Web3 can be in as many different ways as possible. And then there's also different creative approaches for us bringing these to light. So if you remember in the most recent interview that I did a couple of days ago, for those listening here on the podcast, we talked from a photographer that are doing really this beautiful light photography in some really innovative ways, and they talked about them being natively digital and monetizing as creators and how that's kind of been brought forward. And now we're going to kind of talk about even kind of how we reinvent from maybe even the business and the marketing side. So I'm excited to bring on my good friend, and he is the man that does more of these live videos than I do. And I wore a special short for him today because he has a regular Facebook Live show that is that he is Joseph Jaffe is not famous. And I have a T-shirt that says, I have to read it. It says, "We are all famous to a few people." And shout out to a good friend of mine who had this created. It was one of his sayings, and I had to go put the shirt on before the show. But Joseph, thanks so much for jumping on the show. You've been mentioned on multiple different episodes. I also want to give you, well, we can call them your flowers, which is what the kids call them on Clubhouse. But I want to give you, I want to thank you publicly before we start. In the early days of this podcast, I'm not thanking you for the selfies on the treadmill, but I'm thanking you because you were someone that was not only listening right away on that day, but you were kind of affirming a lot of the topics that I was talking about in ways that was kind of validating things as a listener and as a listener and a friend. But that kind of helped me kind of kickstart a lot of this podcast. Where for those that have never launched a podcast, it's very lonely in those early days when you have not many people that even know about the show or they're listening. And you record it by yourself, you upload it, and then you just hope people are taking away. And Joseph, you were messaging me on a regular basis with your takeaways, your favorite part of each episode, and that meant a lot to me. And I just want to put that out publicly. But Joseph, for those that don't know you, don't know the famous you that is you, go ahead and introduce yourself to our amazing audience.
First of all, the crowd is going crazy. But I have to tell you, I'm really pissed right now because I am a long time listener, first time caller, first time guest. I've never missed an episode. And I hate listening or watching live because I want it all for myself. Now, this is an episode I'm going to miss because now I'm on it, and it's the first time technically I'm going to miss it. But I've got more for you as well. If you have a look at my shirt. I'm wearing one of your shirts. I'm wearing an NFT 365.
Look at that. Much appreciated.
I love it. No, I've been listening to it. I've never missed an episode, and it's been incredible. The consistency that you've gone through. There's also a consistency of being a listener, and it's also work, and it's also an obligation, and you have to make the time. And it's been well worth it. And the problem is, I don't know how many of my thoughts today are mine and how many are yours now. It's like a mind meld. So I might just say, like, as I often say, and you go, no, pretty sure that's me too, Joe.
Which I love that part of it. And for those to qualify too, Joseph and I have known each other for many, many years. We got to know each other a lot better thanks to or not thanks to a global pandemic that allowed us to spend a lot of hours on Clubhouse together as well. But we finally met in person just this past week. So it's also kind of like another, beautiful synergy that world came together. And, best-selling author, you mentioned consistency. I mean, let's face it, you've been living the consistency part. Tell the people a little bit about that journey that you went from pre-pandemic, of course, some of the health conditions that led into the show that you have, and kind of now you're kind of chasing your dreams in multiple different ways.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, so you know the drill that I described my life BP and AP before pandemic and after pandemic. And before pandemic, five-time author, keynote speaker. I haven't keynoted in as many countries as you, but I've keynoted in well over 50. And then of course it all goes to hell, everything disappears. And I pivot without even knowing that I was pivoting. I started what was then called Corona TV, which is now called Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous. And if you ask me to describe myself today, I would say that I'm a host. I'm a talk show host. Not only have I lent into it, I've embraced it. It is my calling, it is my purpose. It's what I was meant to do on this earth. Can you imagine discovering your calling in the most weirdest, awful, and awkward of circumstances? So today I have guest number
Woo!
373.
Congrats.
373. And you know, and there's a vision, right? There's a vision which is to reinvent the talk show. I sometimes say WWCD. What would Carson do? I feel like this is an opportunity using Web3, using community, using hold economy, using creator coins to, leaning into things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's an opportunity to actually reinvent a business show, but in an entertaining, engaging, innovative, creative, and inclusive manner. So then, of course, doing all of this and going back to consistency, Fanzo, I got a piece of advice early on in the process, which, geez, it's amazing how it stuck with me. If you are starting a streaming show, truth can be said for podcasts as well, and you're not prepared right now to commit to it for 2 years, no matter what, stop right now. And that actually didn't oppress me. It liberated me because it took the pressure off. I was like, you know what? We're at the beginning of a marathon. Put your head down, enjoy it, focus. Now, I just want to skip to a few things because you alluded to it. I'm one of the few people that can honestly say 2021 sucked more than 2020. I go for my two things happen in March. One is I got my creator coin, the Jaffe coin, which changed my life and
We both
changed
got our
your
coins
life.
around the same exact time too, for just
Yeah,
context for those listening.
a- absolutely. And today actually I'm doing a little bonfire, a little airdrop for NFT 365 listeners. You'll probably see it in the show notes, but here's the catch. You have to hold an ADHD coin to get Jaffe. So it shows you how we collaborate and support one another. So and of course, who listening to this amazing show is not holding an ADHD coin? That's rhetorical because everyone is. So I get the coin and then I go for my physical and find out that I need open heart surgery. Now, fast forward to, I'll give you the punchline. Spoiler alert, I'm alive. I'm not dead. I'm not dead. But four hospital visits, three infections, two surgeries, and then I got COVID. And this was 2021. And you know what? I made it through, and I'm smiling, and I seize every day like it is my only day and my last day. And so, here I am going through this and living this Web3 experience. And like you, fans, I went all in, and I, every single day is an incredible adventure.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember when you kind of first brought up the heart surgery side, and then the infections afterwards. And I mean, talking about like I was making like that feeling of like, can that guy just catch a break, right? And then there was like the like wow, like the things that I'm going through is a hell of a not compared to what Joseph's going through. And then you got COVID, and you also at through the same time, we're kind of living, learning this creator world, creator coin. You have the Jaffe coin, and like your commitment and belief in like reinvention, and also like you said, like you consider yourself a host, right? Like that's your piece. I think that's like it's a beautiful thing for us all to recognize that like our like what we call ourselves when someone asks like what we do is up to us. Like we've still like in this like weird world, like we still like want to qualify about what we like the label we think people want to put us in. I loved your commitment to that at the beginning. I also laughed because it was Corona TV first, and I almost like forget that it was called the coronavirus, right? Like in a weird way, like the corona part of it started to drop off, and then you went through the rebrand as well. while all the same time having a creator coin. So you and I have both kind of launched our creator coins around the same time, which is kind of a beautiful, uh, beautiful yet chaotic, year
Mm.
plus almost year and a half it's been for both of us. But you have the luxury or proud distinction that I definitely do not have, that you've stayed on weekly rewards since the very beginning, every single week of your coin. I fell off twice, once a very short amount of time, and then I fell off for a long period in the fall. I'm curious, like for all that, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things, including Alpha Collective and thing that you have coming on, and but I'm curious, like from your vantage point, like you've written, I mean, more books than I've read. And that's actually probably the truth, which is probably I didn't think about that until it came out of my mouth, and I was like,
That's hysterical. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
it.
yeah. I've been to more countries than you have for speaking, and you've written more books than I've actually probably read cover to cover. But from a marketing and brand, and like you and I were both in social audio clubhouse spaces. We weren't talking about crypto. We weren't talking about Web3. We weren't talking really about NFTs. We were talking about like what brands need to do to reinvent themselves in this like digital future post the pause, right? Like post whatever the pandemic, we can look at it, and then all of a sudden, like the language started to get a little bit more Web3 and then we had the coins. We both had coins, and then we started playing in the coins. But then we eventually kind of got into the NFT space. But I'm curious, what would you say has been one of the skill sets or your like the way that you've been able to bring something from Web 2 and your vast experience into your creator coin that has allowed your creator coin to stay successful? And for those that don't know, like keeping on rewards means it has to be continually growing, but it has to be continually growing like at a pace where those are holding or reinvesting and you're kind of building together. So you are kind of the rising tide lifts all ships. What would you credit or kind of think about what is the credit for kind of what you've been able to do with that coin? Because kudos to you.
I mean, the thing about strategy as well is you can always retrofit it, right? You can always cheat by looking back and saying, yeah, of course I knew what I was doing. Um, there are a bunch of things. I will tell you that from my perspective, and I was saying this early into the pandemic, even before the coin, my formula for success was one, love what you do, two is be true to yourself, and three is stay the course. So there's this idea of the long game, the long run, the marathon, not the sprint. And I'll tell you, my strategy with my coin, which I'm always happy to share, has been the tortoise versus the hare. It rhymes. And for me, it was slow and steady wins the race. I wanted to be off the radar. In fact, being off the radar was really good in terms of not drawing the attention of the whales. And until such time that I'm the fourth or fifth most supported coin, and now I'm stepping up. And I'm not just stepping up externally, I'm stepping up internally as well by actually trying to lead and mentor other creators to actually be the rising tide. But so one of them was this idea of slow and steady wins the race. I just had enough difference between my weekly average and my 4 weekly average, my monthly average, which was enough to keep me at an acceptable. So I was in flash. I never got a lot of rewards, but I got every single week. I didn't reinvest all my rewards back into my coin. I kept some, I moved some, I supported other creators, and it worked for me. Now it could have not worked, but Fanzo, like for me, and I've been saying this to a lot of people, I have a very, very simple 2x2 matrix that I promise you will apply and work 100 times out of 100. And it is as follows: there's good and bad, there's best and worst, and in terms of this idea of old and new, right? So old, new, best, and worst. Here's how it works. I want you to reject the worst of the old, and I want you to keep the best of the old. I want you to embrace the best of the new, and I want you to ignore the worst of the new. So when we think about fundamentals, the best book I will ever write was my third book, Flip the Funnel. Unfortunately for me, I peaked too soon because I've written five, right? But it is actually in that book that I without even knowing outline creator coins. I called them universal currency, and I said every single brand will have its own universal currency. Nike will have a swoosh, Coke will have a ribbon, and with currency, as I wrote, you can buy it, sell it, hold it, redeem it, gift it, exchange it for priceless experiences. I was actually outlining exactly what now we are living as well. And so for me, what is it about? It's the killer app of Web3: retention, loyalty, advocacy. And that is what I'm doubling down on now. All of the other stuff, the speculation, the acquisition, the investing, other people can play in that sandbox. Where I'm going to play, which I know you play in as well, is this idea of ultimately, investing in our lifeblood and our life force, which is our customer, our fans, right? A thousand true fans, super fans. This is the model. It's worked, it works, and it's always going to work.
I mean, I love all of that, and you've been living it, right? And like, I mean, proof is in the coin. And like for those listening too, I think part of this whole idea of creating in this space is that we have to look at ways to approach it. I love the idea of like, like for me, the worst of the new, in your sense, it's never bothered me about people because I've like, I mean, I even have a sign up on top of my thing that says you can't fix stupid, right? You can't stop bad people from doing bad things. You can't fix stupid, right? Those are, and no technology or innovation since the beginning of time has been able to solve either one of those, right? And there's part of it where people will just grab on, like, oh my goodness, that thing happened. It was bad on an early adoption curve. That's why I'm not adopting. And I'm curious. There's kind of two places I want to go with that part of the conversation. The first one is, Joseph, from you being running agencies, but this is the thing that like blew my mind about what you had done with Crayon, right? It was Crayon. Sometimes I want to call it Crayola, and I'm like, wait a second, it's great. With Crayon is that
We
you were
we hoped, by the way, we might get sued, and that would give us a little bit of earned media, but
some
we
free,
didn't.
yeah, some PR play there. But you were, I mean, you mentioned like in Flip the Funnel, you were talking about this universal currency, but you were also monetizing in a like, let's just say in the Second Life version of like it was really the metaverse before the metaverse and the Decentraland, like this idea of kind of reimagining how our digital relationship and connections look like. Can you talk a little bit about what like because I didn't even know this is how I mean I'm on tech. I'm not I wouldn't consider myself a gamer. I wasn't on Second Life, although my employees, like almost all of them were on, which is kind of funny in like the cybersecurity realm. But talk to us a little bit about those times because I didn't realize like brand partnerships and there was like I didn't realize all of that happened until I met you, and I was like, holy hell, there was this whole world playing in a digital reimagining a digital universe long before the blockchain. Talk to us a little bit about that because I think that context will help people realize that yes, we're early, yes, we're creating something new, but we've been playing in this space for a long while in ways that we can reinvent.
Yeah, and the thing about Second Life, I mean, let's start with Crayon, right? When you went to Crayon's website, our website, it was actually crayonville.com. Now, why? Because crayon.com wasn't available. It's really important that people remember necessity is the mother of invention. So, what you do is you take the weakness, you take the challenge, and you flip it around. So, you go to the website, and there's a postcard of our island in Crayonville. And it says, join us in Crayonville. That's all it says. That's the only thing on the entire website. When you click on it, it opens up Second Life and you go into Second Life. Now, we had an island, Crayonville. We had offices. We had a rooftop area with a pool. We actually had parties there with avatars dancing, with Matthew Ebel piping in live streaming music. He was playing live. We met every Tuesday morning. We had coffee with Crayon. All the avatars, grouped around. We had topics which we could put on the wall. People were typing. We had our status meetings in our conference room. People could come and watch us in status. They couldn't come in, but they could see the slides on the wall, which of course were very strategically written as well. We had a diner where we held job interviews. We had, so we create all this thing. But here's the key: is that whenever anyone visited our island, they would always appear, right? They would appear and float down. We always made sure someone was on shift. Someone was on shift. So you could greet them and say, hey, welcome to Crayonville. Is this your first time here? Can we show you around? So when a brand arrived in Crayonville, we met them, and that was a lead gen or relationship building opportunity. Now, when a brand comes to your website, you don't know that. You can't visit it. Now think about that from a customer standpoint, right? You can do this in a virtual world. When people show up in your space, you can meet them, you can greet them, you can show them around. This is the Walmart greeter, but just in a virtual environment. Now, the other thing is one of the projects I'm proudest of, we worked with Coca-Cola, and we did a project for them called Virtual Thirst. Now, it's all based on strategy. That's the point I'm trying to make here, again and again and again, right? So Coca-Cola, this is the brief. I can remember it like it's yesterday. Coke is in 204 countries, 206 countries. It is the only brand that is in as many countries, as that. I think it's 206. Coke says we are wherever our customer is. So if our customer is in Second Life, we need to be there. So what we did is we said, well, what are we in the business of? We're in the business of thirst. How would you quench a thirst in a virtual environment? How would you get a Coke? And so the question came, what about a vending machine? But then the question came down to, but what does a vending machine look like in a virtual world? And what would it dispense? And so we turned to developers. And so, and the stuff, I'm getting goosebumps because the stuff that came back, it would dispense optimism, it would dispense happiness, it would dispense,
Wow.
community. So one of them, for example, you were in a bubble machine and you would float up and you would be part of the bubbles. In another one, you'd actually be in a snow globe with the polar bears, and you could actually take a snapshot and send it as a holiday card. And so what really was happening is we were reimagining Coke's presence and brand essence in an environment where there were no constraints. There were no, laws of physics that would say it has to be a rectangular machine.
Yep.
It has to be plugged into a wall. And you know what? We still, if you go and Google it, you can still find videos that summarize what we were able to do. And I'll say one more thing, and this is like why I love this topic, right? Even if there were 50 people in Second Life when we did the grand reveal, or 80 or two, Second Life doesn't have the reach. Second Life is too small, blah, blah, blah. We created video, and we took the video and we put the video on YouTube, and we put paid media behind it, and we pitched it to all the dailies and the trades. And before we know it, we had millions and millions and millions of impressions. So that's what happens when you think strategically.
I love all of that, and I love the live comments too. We're recording this live on YouTube Live, and people are talking about brilliant idea, so cool, and that is really reimagining, right? And this is like my problem with virtual events as a whole, right? And actually, I like knocking virtual events is like we take offline problems and try to translate them in to the online world and solve a virtual event rather than realizing what is the experience that we're providing, and then how do we reimagine it when we have 360 degrees around us in this virtual digital world. And you did that long before that was like even any of these things. I'm curious, I don't know if I've even ever asked you this question before, because we've been on so many stages together, and stages as in Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse. But through all of that, did you identify yourself as a creator?
That's a really good question. I am going to give you a very, very simple answer, and I push back. I do not believe that people that blog and are creators. I don't believe that marketers are creators. I don't. I don't. I think creators are artists, and I've always felt I'm a bit of a purist in that way. I regard myself as a creator because I'm the host of a talk show, because I'm the showrunner, because I'm the creative director, because I have a series. I feel like I've earned the right to call myself a creator. Now, other people have different points of view. And not only do I respect it, but I've come to broaden my regard that, you know what, anyone that creates content consistently could and should be called a creator. It's almost elitist to say just because I don't paint or dance. I mean, I've heard your intro so many times. I don't sing, I don't dance, I don't, you know.
Yep.
So these were long regarded as creative arts, but you can be creative in a tweet, right? I mean, look at Duncan, I mean, not Duncan, the Dunk in the Dark, the
Mhm.
Oreos Dunk in the Dark. You can be creative a whole host of ways. So I've definitely opened my mind to believe that anyone that is creating content on a consistent basis deserves the right and has earned the right to call themselves a creator.
Now, and I just say for those listening, like part of the this idea of like discerning the right and owning the right and believing like you've earned it, and like as a host, like I think there's something beautiful about our respect for the way that we approach some of these things, right? Like your running joke, Joseph, you and I make a living for many years. We'll talk about how you're changing the way that you make your living as a speaker, but like we used to laugh and joke, like anyone can put speaker in their bio on any social, right? But like, what does it mean to really be a speaker? And I always felt like there was like this like weird, like we didn't want other people like to call themselves a speaker, but yet there really was no like exact criteria. Like once you've spoken on this many stages, or there has to be this many people in the audience, but there is something that we hold to like what that means to us even making a living on it. And I like you was like I in a weird way, I actually liked when people called me an influencer more than a creator, which I know there's a lot of people that don't like the word influencer. I never minded it because when I got labeled it was the first paid gig I had on ever on social media. I had won an award. It was a paid gig and they were like, "You're a top 25 social business influencer." And I was like, "Cool. That's better than me growing a following because I've been growing followings on social and that's never monetized." Right? It's like in a weird way I played that. And you and I have had that discussion on like creator versus artist. We've had that discussion, but I hadn't asked you about like how you identified prior and like now, which I think is an important kind of like segue as we move forward into kind of Web3, because you're not only kind of like leaning in, you have the creator coin, you've had NFTs through Rally, but you're going all in a way that I don't know anyone else that is going all in. And I think I find this intriguing. I think you and I we share ideas and text on a regular basis on concepts, and I will say one of the things that I really appreciate the way that you look at. We both share like our passion for brands. Like we like to call brands out. We like to believe in brands that can be better and do better. But I would argue that we both have found in Web3 a unique way to kind of create this creator economy without us having to be fully reliant on only brands, which kind of our worlds were previous to this. So I'm curious your take as you became a host and you kind of more identified as a creator. Do you think that also shaped the people that you believed you could impact and make kind of the biggest work on? Because you're also a professor at an NYU, right? And like you're an educator from first and foremost, as well as a speaker, as well as an author, as well as a talk show host. How do you look at like your shift as you kind of embrace creator to how you think about impacting others?
So the best teachers are students, and the best students are teachers. And
I
learning,
was
and
a really bad student, just to put that out there.
so therefore you're a bad teacher. Well, you're so many things that you can't win them all. You can't win them all, man.
Very true.
I don't think I was a good student either. I mean, I was gifted, but I was lazy. But I just hadn't until I found my calling, which was marketing. And I remember one of the first this real this real soul. See, I bleeped myself. This real idiot from Unilever back in the day was hiring for marketing jobs, and he said, "You don't have to have studied marketing to be eligible to get this marketing role. Look at me, I'm the head of HR, and I've got a zoology degree." And you know what? He was right. He was still an asshole, but but he was right, because you either have it or you don't. You either have it in your veins or you don't. You either believe it or you don't. And so for me, like this, I was always meant to be a writer. I was always meant to be a teacher. And now, in many respects, writing equals creating, except I'm now not writing as much, I'm talking. But it's all, the thing is, I feel like everything I've done in my life has come to this, and you feel it too. I've heard you.
Yep.
It's almost like it's all converging on this moment right now. Every chapter of my story was a book that I wrote. Now, when I wrote Life After the 30-Second Spot in 2004, one of the chapters, one of the 10 approaches, was called Communal Marketing, which I defined as marketing to and through communities. Guess what? That sounds a lot like Web3. Also, the phrase social media didn't exist. Also, neither did Facebook. And then, enjoying the conversation, I said, how to engage marketing weary consumers through the power of community, dialogue, and partnership. Gee, that sounds a lot like Web3 too. So here's the thing: don't be distracted by names and titles and descriptions, etc. The best practice, where the puck is heading, is this idea of finally being able to create. Web 1 was read, Web 2 was read write, Web 3 is read write reward. And here's the thing. I know I've gone on a little tangent, but it's like I feel so passionate about this, is that it is not. I want people to just like listen to this, let it sink, let it land, and then I want to hear what you think. It is not good enough. It is not acceptable anymore to do what you said you would do, which is to deliver the product and the service on time, as charged, as promised. You have to do more. And how did I find out about this? What was my mic drop moment? It's what happened with SOS and OpenSea. It was the moment that OpenSea went from hero to villain, and everyone said basically, screw you, you've stolen our money. And OpenSea was like, we just took 2.5% exactly like we said we would. But that's when the moment, that's when the epiphany happened, which is the more customers stay with you and stand by you and create content and refer and write ratings and reviews and join the conversation, and the longer they've given you their time, their money, their loyalty, their engagement, you've got to give back. What was the best practice with mobile, which was the notification, is now the airdrop in a Web3 environment. Surprise and delight. And by the way, what did I end with now? Surprise and delight. Guess what that is? The best of the old.
Which,
What
I
was,
mean,
what was the question again?
no, I love where you took that. I mean, I will mention that I was working for UPS when you wrote that first book in 2004. I was right out of college delivering packages at UPS, and shout out to any UPS drivers that are listening. I know we have a lot of people in the delivery truck space that are jumping into NFTs, listening to the podcast. It was one of my favorite gigs, and actually, it was so interesting that you were kind of talking about you were talking about these things when I didn't even give a flying anything about online and social, and when I was presented marketing in my university studies, and I consider this a failure by my professor, even my business school. It felt like it was sales enablement, kind of like hokey, and it just wasn't like when it was presented to. I only took one class of it in my 4 years, and so it's very interesting because like for me now, like you were talking about in 2004, letting it happen, hey, I'm gonna drive this to happen. For me, like I feel like I kind of came in the back door a lot of it to marketing and community, and realizing like I spent a lot of my career community side. But the thing that you said about, you have to, just delivering on what you said is not enough. I think the key part of that is recognizing that when we decide that this is what we are going to deliver, the world changes from that day forward. And from that day forward, what was good enough at that day is no longer okay, right? I think that is this part of it. And like that airdrop scenario where, and I've said this about NFTs, people will say, Brian, you only speak about NFTs from a consumer perspective or a creator's perspective, not like the brands. Because I believe like every gym, the membership for a gym will be an NFT. But here's the part of that is, I'm sorry, gyms, but you've taken advantage of us for far too long. The fact that you are only a gym that survives if we show up and pay for our membership, yet we have to pay a cancellation fee. We have to agree for like a 2-year membership, which, let's face it, most of us sign up in January and want to cancel in February or March. And I think like one of the things that this kind of comes into, what you said, Joseph, is how can a brand or a company or an industry surprise and delight and over deliver without, like, they have to do something that they aren't currently doing, right? Like, continuing to do the same thing they did in Web 2 in Web 3 will not work, especially because we as consumers are smarter, we have more information. Also, let's face it, we have a greater voice. We also had a pandemic that forced us to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. Now that's 3 episodes I've mentioned that phrase in, which is a little too much. But the other part of this that I think is a really interesting like byproduct of the journey that you've been on, you're also educating the college age students now that are coming out of university. When they think about that surprise and delight, it's almost like expected, right? Like, like I think there's a generation of like, hey, like I bought this and I get this. But for like, I think what role, I guess the question I have for you is, what role does the loss of like loyalty and the reimagine of like loyalty given to the power of the actual customer play in a lot of this change? Because for a lot of, I mean, I had a real estate company, I had a gym membership, and I had another, I'm not going to say what the other one was, come at me and say, Brian, I'm not going to promote your podcast anymore. And I was like, what's going on? And they were like, you only speak from the benefit, like you're going to make a lot of these brands and industries go out of business. And I'm like, No, I'm going to help you define your loyal customers and empower them and over deliver them. The brands that aren't delivering and aren't willing to over deliver are going to fail, and they probably should because they need to go in the past. But how do you look at that? Because from like this whole space emerging, because it's also kind of why do most NFT projects fail? It's because they don't understand that loyalty curve and the over deliver either.
Yeah, and it's, going back to that first book for a second, I actually came up with what I call the 10 tenets of today's consumer. And one of them, I remember it, it said, today's consumer is loyalist. I said, the word is made up, the meaning is not. The other thing I said in that book, and I had a personal moment of like just joy, which is meeting my idol, Philip Kotler, Professor Philip Kotler, and telling him that basically the four P's that I'd like taken his concept of like within the four P's and I'd completely reinvented them. I created the six C's. And he looked at me and he said, it's about damn time someone took such an old model and basically broke it and tried to fix it. But going back to the four P's are commoditized: product, price, place, promotions, all commoditized. Everything, and I can go into that until the cows come home. But like as a classic example, I'll never forget this: Singular Wireless, which became AT&T. I once was walking down the street in New York City and I saw a poster and it said the network with the fewest dropped calls. So I said, you're basically advertising yourself saying we suck the least. It's like the airline with the best on, we are late the least amount. So like that is not a way to differentiate, and that is not a way to run your business. You are doing those brands the greatest service in the world because A, you're giving them free consulting, and B, you're helping them identify the inevitable. In Built to Suck, in my fifth book, I actually created a whole philosophy called Embrace Your Heresy. Are you prepared to put yourself out of business? Because if you don't do it, someone will. It is absolutely. I even wrote in that book, I said every single company, if a company was an empire or a dynasty, not one civilization, empire or dynasty has outsurvived time. Look at WeWork now. Look at Facebook right now. Even Jeff Bezos, who said one day we will go out of business, we will go bankrupt. Your job, he was talking to his employees, was to delay this for as long as possible. And that to me was like the ultimate validation. So when we look, like, let's go back to NFTs. I'm so glad you're focusing on it because what the NFT is, and I know we'll talk about Alpha Collective, but I'm not even calling it an NFT. I'm calling it a digital membership card or an NFT. Call it whatever you want. But here's the thing: you can sell it at any time. And that secondary market, and it's easy to do. That is what changes everything. Anything that is membership based, any club, anything that you own can just be transferred, and not only transferred, but of course, the original creator gets to benefit every time. That is groundbreaking. And
You know,
so it's groundbreaking.
it
And
is.
if
It is.
you lean into that, then you can only win.
And it's also the beautiful thing of this is that it is all done automatically and verified and authenticated, right? Like I think there's such a because I like the idea that you're calling it the digital membership card, right? But there's like for a lot of people that'll be like, wait a second, like I have my Marriott rewards number or I have my Southwest Airlines or whatever that may be, right? But that is like it is a reward system that it was built on a platform that is owned and managed by the brand that gets to control and decide how you use it, why you use it, where you use it. And then they also don't give you any ownership in it, right? Like there's no ownership. And I look at that as part of the problem has always been is how do we authenticate someone that actually that can prove that value, right? And I will tell you, you know, Gary V and V Friends and delivery of those products have been interesting because of all the things that Gary has delivered, all of them have been pretty much delayed. And I'm heading to VCon tomorrow morning, and I will tell you, he put out the message like, hey, you have to verify your VCon ticket, which was rolled out as an NFT, with your event app. And I will tell you, as soon as I saw that tweet, I was like, oh my god. Like event apps haven't figured out how to post a social natively in most event apps, right? Like event apps are some of the worst technology ever. And I was very like, man, this is going to be really a horrible experience. Now, I didn't say that. I was like, "What's gonna be a horrible experience?" But I was like, I still didn't think like because VaynerMedia was behind it. I still believed it was like it was gonna be horrible. It was the most seamless experience that I've had with an event app ever, where all I did was say connect wallet inside of the event app when it opened. It verified that it was me. It even did my face ID to, like add like the KYC element of it. It then confirmed that this was the event that I was going to, and then it connected it to my actual wallet. And the beautiful thing about that is that ticket that I got was airdropped to Scott, who works at Rally, who's a friend of ours that is also a creator. And Scott got that because he held a gift goat V Friends version 1, and he was given 5 of them. And him and I were working on something, and he said, "Hey, my way of giving back, Brian, is I want to gift you this VCon ticket." And so, in the weirdest of ways, like to kind of sync this all into what you were sharing as well, is like the beauty is VaynerMedia, VCon, VFriends had to do nothing, right? Like the marketplace existed. Gary airdropped this to his loyal people and said, "Here's 5 of them. We don't need 5 of them, right? You can resell them so you can make money. That's giving them over delivering for their purchase of that NFT." It allowed them to transfer it via marketplace. You could sell it. You could use it. You could gift it as what it was done to me. And the beautiful thing of this is there was no need for them to be in there or to have any interaction. So I think for like those brands and those are out there, that's such a powerful piece. Now, I'm curious, Joseph, as you and I have been on this journey the last 6 months with Alpha Collective, which is a project we're going to talk about. We've pushed through a lot of this times where we were riding a very nice market. Then things got a little rocky, and then there was projects that were dropping. We had Moonbirds and Proof Collective and a lot of those type of things that had happened. But then there was also like we also had this like, how do we bring in Web 2 people so that they don't make Web 1 to Web 2 mistakes going from Web 2 to Web 3, which I know that you said you were going to steal like my phrases. That's now me returning that favor because you're the one that kind of coined that. So I'm going to give you that credit. But part of that is like, there's a balance of like forcing people to change versus like giving them like onboarding steps. For you, you're actually doing both of those in your 2 packages. In one way, with Web3, you only can purchase and I want you to explain that part of like everything has been Web3 enabled, like all of your services, all of the things you provide. But also then with Alpha Collective, you're giving opportunities to onboard in ways that don't force that like barrier. So you're kind of presenting it in 2 different ways. How do you look on like the onboarding of leaders into Web3, and how did that factor into your decisions on Alpha Collective rolling out? And give us a little more details on that.
Well, there's so much I want to say, and I'll see if I can say it the best possible way. First of all, I just want to say, that just pick up on a few thoughts. I was jotting down notes. You've got your stupid statement. My one is you can't automate stupid. But I want to give a new build. This is what you've inspired me to build on it now. You can authenticate stupid. So think about that for a second. That's the
Yep.
new one. You can authenticate stupid. It's on the blockchain. Stupid. The other thing is the word smart contract is a transferred epithet, right? Like when you trip on a chair, you say stupid chair. You're the stupid person. Smart contract is about the people that create them and ultimately the people that use them as well. The third thing I wanted to say is, for me, the biggest innovation in this whole Web3 and NFT world is the P of price, because pricing has been so commoditized. You go into a showroom, you go and Amazon tells you exactly how much the product is worth and you buy it. Best Buy tries to counter it by coming up with their price match. We've become commodities. How do you buy commodity? Oil or coal or steel, you buy it on price. But it's the pricing that is so innovative here and the different ways we can price. And ultimately, what you want to get to is to a point where people say, I'm never selling. Never. I would rather actually give up my pinky, which, by the way, millennials in a study said they'd rather cut off their pinky than give up their cell phone, right? So, or their pager in your case. I've been listening.
Uh,
So let's talk about what I'm doing. Now, first of all, I'm going to rattle off a bunch of things as quickly as I can. And what I want people to take away from this is I'm practicing what I preach. I'm living this. I don't know that it's the right solution. I don't know it's going to work, but I'm prepared to try it. And if it doesn't work, I'll try something else. So the first thing is I might actually be the first human being to NFT themselves. What do I mean by that? I mean that from the Alpha Collective starts minting. I'm going to drop some Alpha May 24th. But from the time that this launches, you cannot buy me anymore. You cannot buy an hour of my time. I'm not available for coaching, for mentoring, for consulting. The only way to get my time is through the Alpha Collective. Secondly, I've taken my speaking engagements and I've NFT'd them. I've created NFTs, and those NFTs are now available on Rally's website, which is nft.rally.io/Jaffe Juice. Here's the thing: I'm turning my super fans into agents. I've discounted my speaking, and I want my super fans and my clients who have seen me speak, who know what the work product is, to be able to resell me at whatever the hell they want. So I'm no longer available now to transact or to buy speaking engagements through traditional means. If a speakers bureau wants me, they got to buy an NFT. No longer available. Everything is focused through the Alpha Collective, which requires a digital membership pass or an NFT to access it, and my creator coin, which accesses me and accesses those NFTs. Those are two things that I've created right now to say I'm all in, and I'm going to prove not only that it works, but it works really well, because the NFTs can be sold and resold, and membership passes. And I'm even telling people with Alpha Collective, like, I'm not even trying to hide it. I'm saying, listen, buy two, buy one for yourself and one to sell or flip or do whatever you want. Chances are, if I've done my job well, do your own research, not financial advice. Sorry, do your own damn research, not financial advice. I don't know what's going to happen to the floor. Exactly. Do your own damn.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we need Kevin to sing.
DYODR.
There you
We're
go.
following fans on. But going back to this idea as well, is like I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, so the NFTs, right? The beauty of these NFTs right now is that my market rate is no longer determined by me. It's no longer determined by me. It is determined by whatever someone is prepared to pay for it. And it's exciting for me. This is so exciting. So what is the Alpha Collective? The Alpha Collective is inspired by the disappointment of missing out on Proof Collective. The Alpha Collective is a premium community that connects executives and DJs to partner and win at the business of Web3. That's what it is. And ultimately, through 52 Alpha Talks delivered by 52 Alpha Talk speakers across 52 weeks, of which you're one of the Alpha Talk speakers, I can hardly wait. I will be in the audience listening to you and learning from you. What I'm trying to do is to create a mechanism and prove that, in fact, the best of the old can win by partnering with the best of the new. And that's what's happening with Alpha Collective. All of this stuff, NFTing me in my speaking, still giving speaking engagements, but I'm doing it in a way that my super fans actually become part of the ecosystem. And the other thing I'm doing, I'm like, honestly, is the whole holding economy. So if you hold 100 Jaffe coins, you become a super fan. You join me for a monthly call where you get to advise me on my show, and I get to share with you what's working if you're looking to start a show as well. Remember, I've got 2 years experience now under my belt. You can suggest guests for the show. If the guest comes on, you can actually interview them. And here's a new piece of alpha that I'm also dropping, is that, I mean, you're a correspondent to my show, but super fans now, by definition now, are correspondents. They can send in any content, any clips whenever they want, and be a part of the show. So I am, Fanzo, when I was teaching back in South Africa a long time ago, the very first time I taught, I'll never forget this. I said, okay, I've got a question. Which is the bank that brought out the first ATM machine in South Africa? And they all thought about it. And I said, please raise your hand if you thought it was Standard Bank. please raise your hand if you thought it was FNB. For, raise your hand if you thought it was Allied Bank, if it was Volkskas Bank, etc. And then they all voted. And then I said, okay, today we're going to talk about the 4 Ps, and that stands for product, price, play. And then someone raised their hand. They said, excuse me, Professor, you didn't tell us the answer. I said, oh, the answer. Who cares? Because everyone has an ATM machine now. The real question is, what is that bank doing today to be the first to lead, to out innovate their competition? And that is how, these things have stuck with me my whole career.
I mean, I love that. I mean, it's such an important piece here of like, because there's a lot of people that feel like we're early. So they have a lot of like, they're making a lot of reactional decisions. There's a lot of people that feeling like they're just getting in now and they're feeling like they're late. But to your point there's also, it's about, framing where we're at, how this all goes. I'm curious, with your NFTing yourself, where, hey, this is the only way that you're going to be able to purchase me. And then also with the Alpha Collective, calling it a collective. What influence, like, I mean, I think it's really important for those to like think about the fact that you were, writing the book in 2004, you were onboarding people into a digital realm that was going like, what does to me, like, what does a vending machine give out digitally? Like when you said that, I remember the very first time you had ever said that, when I was listening, I think it was probably in a Clubhouse room. And I was like, I remember being like stumped, and I was like, I don't even know where he's going with this. And then when you said it was inspiration and positivity, and like to me, it was like boom, like mind blowing. Like, oh my goodness, that's how we're because like ultimately we're drinking that our favorite soda because it's giving us an emotion and that feeling. I'm curious because you've been there, done that, been an early adopter. Like I call myself a futurist, but like you've been on that space, in ways that I wasn't even playing in that playground. What influence of that has on the words and the language that you use? Because you've mentioned you're using like digital membership card. It's a collective, right? You're saying, hey, it's, I'm NFTing myself in a marketplace. How important is like that, like words and the way that we kind of present that to different audiences? Because I feel like you're doing it and most people don't see that, right? Like they'll just assume like, oh, well, we can call it anything we want. But I know you from a strategic reason. There's a reason that you're doing those things. Can you talk a little bit about that kind of framing?
Yeah, words are so important. We always heard that when it was politicized, words matter. Well, they do matter, very much so. And so everything is very intricate and deliberately chosen. And this idea of collective is and by the way, here's something that I haven't shared with anyone as well. I'm told to keep dropping the alpha, is that my title now in the Alpha Collective is host. I'm the host. I'm the host of the party. I don't want party crashers. I don't want party poopers. I don't want party animals. What I want is life of the party. That's not me. I'm just the host. I'm just going to make sure that the punch bowl is full, that no one's spiking it, and that there's plenty of guac for everyone, and there's some nice music, etc. Occasionally, I'll suggest a couple of topics, but most of the time, I'm going to get out your way and let you, the collective, the members, have as many conversations as you want. So words absolutely matter. Joseph Jaffe is not famous, right? Why? Because my guests are famous. My audience, my community is famous. There is this idea that when I started the show, history, heritage, why did I start the show? Because I wanted to help people that were less fortunate than me, that were in the same boat that I was, that were stuck at home. So words matter, and they are so important as well. And that's why I think like we need to choose these words like really, really carefully and make sure that we're not leading with bad words and bad ideas, right? And I will say one thing, sometimes, which really pisses me off, sometimes good words are co-opted or people roll their eyes, like innovation. Like,
Yep.
when did innovation become a bad word? I will defend innovation until I die as well. That suddenly people like, and it's already happening. NFTs, like
Or even
Web3.
community. So I've
Yeah.
seen this recently where people
My
say the word
God.
community, and I'm like, you realize community's been around since the dawn of man. Like this is like we're rolling our eyes as if like and that's actually a really valid point too that you're bringing up, Joseph. On like I think it's important that the words that we're using, and like, I mean, this goes back to that episode where I did like I don't remember how many it was, 72 words of Web3 or whatever the hell it was. Like, I get frustrated a little bit in like, there is a desire and need for some to make people feel lesser than them or behind them by using complex words or things that make them feel dumb or, oh, I don't know enough, so I must look up to them. And there's also like the people that are still kind of operating from, you know, excuse my French, but like the need to be an asshole to be a great, marketer or a salesperson, right? Like the need to be like you can't come down to their level. And I believe like even what you're saying there, like when you're the host, that's like, I mean, if you think about that, you're saying like, hey, I have the experience, I have all of this knowledge. I mean, let's face it, your knowledge of Web3, having a creator coin for a year and a half. I mean, there's only a handful of us that can even say that in the world, right? But you're also recognizing like my role as a great community leader, my role in this as a host is that great facilitator, the great organizer, that, you know, the punch bowl being filled. But there are still people that are out there right now that are operating from not only this need to be like polarizing, but like you can't be friends with your customers. You can't care about your community. If you show that you care about your community, it makes you lesser of an authority. How do you look at that in this Web3 space? Because I'm hoping it gets disrupted, but it's unfortunate. I feel like it still bleeds into a lot of the like the Web3 success stories today.
Yeah, I mean, love wins. You know, love will ultimately prevail. And I used to, when I was immature back in the early days, when I had the power of being you know, I was the prototypical geeky blogger living in the basement of my mom's house, you know, you know, angry at the man, etc. And I got very personal at the best of times because I was flexing this illusion of power. Now I go back to don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Attack, as the saying goes. It's like obviously not politically, you know, 2022, but they say, you know, they say attack the idea, not the man, right? And so, or the person in this case. And so, like, it's just insecurity. That's all it is. It's complete insecurity that people are not happy enough because I mean, I feel like you've probably even said this on the show. Our natural state is good. Our natural state is good. And when people do not act like they're good, it's because something is up. And it's really hard when we are hurting ourselves to be able to dig deep and expect us to have to rise and sanctimoniously or self righteously say, well, they're probably having a bad day. Well, guess what? We've all had a bad 2 years. You know, so like, so I actually think I just double down on goodness and kindness and realize there's a place for all of us. I buy every single community or collective project. I would buy Proof if I could afford it. I just bought.
We were texting when Proof was going down, and we both, looking back now,
I
that
couldn't
was
get
like
enough ETH in my wallet.
we collected our ETH together for a couple projects that we should have saved that ETH and got that
But
one.
but I'll tell you something, and this is like, you know, and you know, the other part of it, fans, is I just try and be honest. I
Right.
just try and be honest. You know, which like, and I say I try and be honest, right? Because it's hard. Which is not to say I'm ever not, but like being honest. It just to be clear, it's not about not being honest. It's about not volunteering certain information. So, for example, I did not know what the all I knew what I had heard of Bitcoin when I got my creator
Right.
coin. I hadn't heard of ETH and this and that. But here's another thing I'll admit. I hated the term metaverse, hated it. I said, I'm not going to use the term metaverse because it sounds like multiverse and we're not cool enough. And it just sounded so weird. Here's another thing, you know, with Proof, I had 0.75 in my wallet and I missed out on it because I couldn't get one ETH into my wallet. But here's what I would have done. I would have sold it within 5 minutes for 2.4, and I would have thought that I was a freaking hero. And I
True.
would hate myself today. I would hate myself
I love
because
that
I
you
missed out.
I love that you brought that up because everyone loves to be like, I wish I was around when Bored Ape came out in Clubhouse in,
I would
in
have
May.
sold that Bored Ape so
So
quickly.
quick. You would have bought it
So
for
quick.
$400 and it would have went, I mean, like July, it went
I
to
would have sold it for
$1,200.
$1,000.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, so like people that are like, wow, they're so lucky that they held on to it. Like some people got lucky because they forgot they bought it. Like that might be a little bit of luck because like you didn't flip it because you didn't know it was worth anything. And I have a friend actually who just messaged me this morning. And he's like, Brian, you kept talking about like crypto and things on your damn Instagram stories. He's like, I realized I had a wallet he went and found $84,000 in Bitcoin that he didn't. And I'm like, what's my percentage? Because he's like, I got it. He got it like way back, and he had a wallet, and he's like, I put it in my like in his like safe, and he's like, I didn't even. He's like, I heard crypto was going on, but I didn't even like dawn on him until he messaged me this morning. But I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate that you're willing to admit those things, right? Because like, I mean, you have a creator coin for a year and a half. Your creator coin has not left rewards. It's the top 5 creator coins on our platform rally. And yet you're also openly admitting the aspect of like, you've been learning as you're going, and especially in this space, right? But you're also being able to tap into all of the things that worked in 2004, all of the things that worked in Second Life, all the things. And the other part that I think that
Yeah.
is beautiful, and for those that want to look at, definitely check out Alpha Collective, because the other part of this is we still need to be connected with people and thought leaders that allow us to be able to feel seen, feel heard. We need to feel like we can, like, this is like that gap that I feel like we have to start to continue to bridge, is that, we can't allow the limitations of digital to prevent us from having the experiences that we would ultimately want to have. And like, wouldn't you love to be inspired, influenced, and have connection with some of the brightest people in the world every single week for a year? Of course you would, but you would say things like, I don't have money for travel, or I don't know the right people, or how the hell would I make that all happen? Ultimately, that's a vehicle and a utility aspect of the Alpha Collective that you're enabling. And if you get into it and you realize that, hey, this wasn't for me, or I don't have the time, there's a
Tell it.
secondary market, right? This isn't a direct transaction
And
piece.
and by the way, you said it so brilliantly with respect to your, like, you were even talking about attending the Playboy party at NFT, and I'm doing the same thing, NYC NFT, NFT NYC.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mess up. Everyone's going to
you
screw that up now forever.
ADHD. I don't know. I'm like, but the thing is, you're like, I already got the utility. So I'll tell you a few things. Like, I've really been thinking about this, fans. So like, there's a lot of stuff I'm saying today that you have even heard before.
Right.
One is Alpha Collective is going to go to market at $2,500 flat fee fiat. I'm flipping it. I'm flipping it. If you want to pay by ETH, you can. But I realize that the real people that I'm going to onboard into this are the executives. And the safest way to do it is not to force them to like have to figure it out. In fact, I said something early on. You were in those planning calls. I said, I want to actually explicitly say, I do not want this to be your first crypto purchase. Why? Because you will get rugged, and I don't want to be responsible for it. And so instead, what I'm going to do is I've enlisted the services of one said iSocial fan slash Fanzo. Fanzo, you're going to be running a workshop for all of the members, and maybe we'll do it monthly, to actually learn how to onboard in the safest, most secure, most open, most welcoming manner. So these are a whole bunch of ways that I'm actually trying to create, again, the best of the old with the best of the new. Here's something else, just a little bit more alpha, is that we start minting, and this is the first time I'm openly, well, I mean, the beauty, yeah, this is the first time I'm admitting it, May 24th. But between May 24th and September 12th, which is when we will officially open the doors, because I'm giving myself time to plan, to execute, to onboard, to listen, to talk, to get feedback. Every single week, I will deliver a keynote to members, and I will be available. I'm going to integrate Calendly into it. And once we launch, the same thing. So people will be able to book me unlimited 15-minute slots as well. I want to make sure that by the time that our virtual doors open, September 12th, people say, I've already got my money's worth. Times 10. Times 10. So that's my North Star. Can I 10x value before their actual pass has even like been activated? And you know what? None of this is Web3 stuff. This is, and none of it is even Web2 stuff. This is basic, what I call now custom obsession.
And let's face it, we not only do we need that now, but we need that kind of like presented to us in ways that are creative, right? And I appreciate that. And that is the full transparency. And like, and I will also say the first founders NFT that we launched, really the first NFT that I ever sold, Mr. Joseph Jaffe was the purchaser of it. He was texting me all day that day and was like, "Don't let me not be the first one to purchase it." And
Within seconds, within
yeah,
seconds.
within seconds. And And I say that also because, we are collaborating. I'm excited to be brought in to, do workshop. I've been part of the, kind of the Alpha Collective brainchild throughout this journey. And there's also something been beautiful about, early on in Rally when I joined, and I think you were on that very first call. I raised my hand and was like, how can this coin help us as creators collaborate more? And unfortunately, I still think the creator coin world is trying to figure that out. Like, and I say like the creator coin like umbrella, right? Because it's not about us. Like, there's a beautiful thing about supporting each other, but also being able to work together to solve problems without having to reinvent everything, right? Well, ultimately, how this world goes, right? Like, I've been a correspondent on your show for many months, and Joseph, for those that don't understand that how that relationship has to work, is like Joseph has to remind me in the day, like, hey Fanzo, I know you and your ADHD, you need to submit this
Oh my
video.
God.
I know.
I
And and
I
and
think I chase after you more than I chase after anyone in my life combined.
that's just that's the truth. But the beauty of this is, like, you're coming on the podcast, right? We both hold each other's coins. We both are participating in our NFT pieces. But I think we also both have a connected appreciation for what we can bring to the table, but also our ability to like recognize, like, hey, if we are trying something and it's not going to work, like, stick with us, and here's how we're going. And I started off this podcast by openly thanking you for early on, because anyone that's creating anything or anyone that's starting anything, you need champions that you can respect and that are as consistent as you're trying to be. And so I have a little bit of an ask for the audience, and like, be that person that Joseph was to me in this podcast, to anyone that's doing an NFT project, to the Alpha Collective, in the sense that if you are participating or you're getting value, you can be that person that, Joseph wasn't doing it like, keep going, Brian. You need to, keep this podcast for every day. He was genuinely listening and sharing the feedback, but in a way he doesn't really, I mean, I didn't even really say this before, but like, that's what kept me going. Cause I know when I launched November 11th, my little thing was, if I make it to Christmas, I'm a freaking winner, because for 40 years, consistency, doing everything every day, has not been part of my life. But thanks to Joseph, you being that feedback on that journey, encouraging, giving that thing, it started to get legs, right? Our team started to grow. We started to build a lot of these things out there. And I will say, like, we can also openly disagree and approach things and recognize, hey, we have to change our course, how we collaborate, how we work. But we do it from both of us from a place of, we respect each other and what we bring to the table and what we can offer. And so I just want to, I think this is a beautiful like lesson and byproduct of like what's possible in this space. And it's kind of fun that, and Joseph, you haven't listened to this episode yet because I recorded it today, and you don't listen to them live. You wait till they're out. But I interviewed a photographer and a dancer, and they've been working together now 10 plus years, creating projects together. They travel the world and create this photo light magic. It's truly amazing. But like, to me, like the idea of like a dancer and a photographer, and they created a brand, a business, a creation, and they're hired by massive brands to establish. I kept asking questions like, you have to both be perfectionists. How do you ever agree on something being done that you're creating, right? Like, and like, where I was getting them to is kind of where I wanted to kind of pull this episode together on, is like, there is something beautiful about, being vulnerable, being transparent, owning like the path that we're on, also recognizing, and this goes to the probably like the takeaway that I think was one of the most valuable in this episode, was this like, not only do we have to recognize, like, we have to look for the good of the old and the good of the new, but we also have to be willing to recognize, and this might be my newest soapbox for the 6 month forward, is that there is a difference between failing in Web3 and a rug pull, right? And we have to be very careful on not labeling things rug pulls that happen to just be a failure of someone trying something and then learning, right? Someone that is doing something with malicious intent to steal money or to manipulate, or has no plan on ever delivering, and is ultimately pulling the rug out behind those that are believing in them. That is one extreme. The other extreme is that we are testing a lot of things out. And I will say, yes, the podcast daily was my version of that, but also was my version of our NFTs. Like, no one had done an NFT attached to a daily NFT project that's going to do a royalty based, percentage. And I picked like the number 22 and 365. You bought the very first 22. And I say all of that because I think there's something beautiful in what we can do supporting each other, being on these journeys together, and then finding also ways to collaborate. And like I will say, like when Joseph bought Founders Pass number one of our NFT back on December 12th, there wasn't like a, hey, we're going to collaborate in the future. It was Joseph believing in me and us spending the time that we had built the trust and the rapport, and then us recognizing like, hey, what's the phrasing, like great recognizes great, like like that, as you kind of push things forward. And so Joseph, as you look now in the lens, you're coming up to launch day. I also know you roll with a lot of things. I think you're traveling to South Africa coming up very soon. And I've been to 76 countries. South Africa is not one of them yet. You just gotta throw that out there. And
When
my favorite.
when you go, we're gonna have to. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to go with you, or to meet you, or
We
do
might we
something.
might have a reason to go. So I'm a diehard Dave Matthews Band fan. Dave Matthews is from, of course, South Africa, and rumor has it 2025 he's putting on a massive festival back there in the country, which he's been hinting at for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years.
Going to be
Um,
NFTs, and they're definitely going to be NFTs
yeah,
involved. You
that's for
know that,
sure.
right?
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
it has to be.
so
And so yeah,
I,
I'll give it over to you. Go ahead, over to you.
no, I mean, you said a bunch of amazing things. Then the first thing that I wanted to just comment on is part of the discovery of how Joseph Jaffe is not famous came about, which was actually Bruce Turkel, who was a guest on my show. Okay, I just got to take a step back because it's the most beautiful story. I was up for a speaking engagement in Lima, and we were negotiating. My wife was going to fly in, and we are going to go on a VIP tour of Machu Picchu, which I've always dreamt of going. And I lost out and I lost out. And I called my host. I said, "Who did I lose out to?" I lost out to this dude, Bruce Turkel. Now, he never went because of COVID. That's the irony. But when I was looking for guests, I emailed him, didn't tell him who I was. He had no idea who I was. And I said, "Would you come on my show?" We became fast friends, best of friends, right? Like so much so, not fanzo Jaffe friends, but close. He lives in Miami. My son goes to school in Miami. He said my son can come and stay at him anytime, or he would mentor my son. But when he was brainstorming with me, and he said to me, he said, "You've got to change the name of Corona TV." I said, "But I don't, poking the bear and it's fun, whatever." He's like, "Dude, it's like calling your show 911 TV." And I was like, "Ugh," like, I just got it. I'm like, I get it. So he says, "Well, are you like Between Two Ferns, like Zach Galifianakis?" And I was like, "No, no, no, no. I'm not a joke. I'm not a clown. It's not a parody." So he said, "Tell me more." And I said, "Here's the thing. If somebody is starting a podcast and they haven't even done their first episode, they don't even have a single viewer or listener. If I'm lucky enough to have an agent or a manager or CAA or one of those companies representing me, if I find out that they said no to someone that had no audience, that hadn't even done their first episode, I will fire them on the spot." And he said, "I got it. The name of your show is Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous." And for me, it was this idea of like, we've got to be there for everyone else. We've got to help everyone else. And you've heard me say this. The new model is community capitalism. The new model is not about a pie. Stick your finger. You don't want to be caught with your fingers in the pie. In this idea of getting a bigger slice and expanding the pie, and it's all rubbish. It's a flame. When I give you my flame does not go out, but together our flames burn brighter. You need oxygen, otherwise every flame goes out. That oxygen is community at the end of the day. And so that's what we're building. We're building this beautiful, beautiful array of light. And that's why, with all the assholes and everything going on, and people pumping and dumping and rugs, etc. I mean, what you said about, I agree with what you said at the end of the day. But you've gone further down the line, because you've spoken about the power of communication. I was listening to it just the other day, and I was thinking, I've done a shitty job communicating in my small Discord for Alpha, even for my own. I got to do better. I got to do better. And that's the thing. We can always do better. We can communicate. We can over communicate. We can say, like you said the other day, "Hey, here's the weekly update." There is no weekly update. Just checking in with you. This stuff is common sense, but how many of us have common sense?
Love it, Joseph. For those that are listening, we're going to do some giveaways. Joseph has blessed us with some giveaways into our Discord. We're going to do some around, of course, the drop of the podcast episode. We'll do some, of course, around Alpha Collective as well. I'm blessed to be able. Joseph's bringing me in to do some of the workshops, also be one of the speakers. Definitely check out the website from us. I mean, the roster of speakers that Joseph has already outreach for, and I will tell you. I was on some of the planning calls where Joseph was saying, "I'm going to get this speaker. I'm going to get this speaker," and I'm like, "Man, Joseph's he's got a high bar. He thinks he's going to get all these people." And then each one was coming back with a yes and a yes, and I was like, "Damn, Joseph! Joseph! When he said he's going to get these people, he's going to get them." And so there's an amazing group of speakers already announced. I know there's more speakers to
Yeah,
come. Uh,
I'm looking at them now, and 52 speakers, 26 male or those who identify as male, 26 female or those who identify as female. Here's the thing about everyone we want more women in tech and more women in Web3. We'll get them. Guess what? They're there. So just open your eyes and actually step up. And so 26 men, 26 women. It's not really that hard. It's not really that hard. And anyone who says it is, you're just not trying enough and you don't care enough. So
I
so
love it.
step it
I
up.
love it. Alphacollective.xyz. Joseph, thank you for everything you provided here. We're seeing lots of the live comments. A couple of people from our team saying that their favorite interview, and I'll just say, like, we've been sharing this stage and this journey, and for those that, like, when you're an early adopter, not only is it a lonely path, but in most cases you become the throat that is stepped on the way to the other ones getting successful, and you almost have to be okay with that. And I learned long ago that I was okay with it, but I wanted to surround myself with the others that were willing to be okay with
You
it. And
you know the line. I mean, there, Joe, my boy. The advice I was given by this actually was English. He is English. There are two types of people. There are pioneers and settlers. The pioneers get shot, and the settlers take the land. You, my boy, are a pioneer. And I was like, you, basically. But he was right. Here's the thing for everybody listening. You know the old saying, I just said it the other day. I was interviewed on a show as well. If I had known then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have got involved. I've changed that. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have started 1 year earlier. And
mm,
we keep hearing we're early, we're early, we're early. You know what? I I go back and when I say, oh, I wrote about creator coins in 2010, and I spoke about communal marketing, and another one I came up with was called consumer generated content. YouTube didn't exist yet. You know what that says? It says that I'm a damn bad business person because I wasn't able to take advantage of any of them. But guess what? We're all in the right place at the right time. We're witnessing the morphing, the pulsing, the death and then the rebirth, and all that happens sometimes 3 times a day. But we're all in the right place at the right time. And I just want to kind of leave people. You've heard me say this again. It's so weird when it's like two friends just hanging out. It's like we're, I don't know whether I've said this to you before in this episode yesterday, but don't look at the finger. Look at where the finger's pointing. And where the finger is pointing is community, dialogue, and partnership. Don't worry about the words and the terms and and build on them as well. Like this idea of, I had Joel Com on my show. He's the funniest guy I've actually ever met. So we came up with this idea of from FUD to fun. Have fun. And then I said to him, my first boss said, have fun, make money. And I changed it to have fun, do good, make money. I was like, I got to build on it. Have fun, do good, make money, get chicks. So, you know what I mean?
I love it. I love it. And I have Joel's book over there on my shoulder. He has the Fun Formula book that he wrote a while ago as well. Joseph, I will point my finger at you, my friend, and say thank you for being on the show.
You're
And
welcome. Thank
we
God it
won't
wasn't
even
the middle finger.
yeah, as long as it's not the middle finger. And Joseph actually has to go run his show as he is the host. So we'll put check out his show, subscribe on YouTube, support your favorite creators, show you care. Joseph, thank you for showing you care for me, for everyone else. Thank you for showing you care and listening to this podcast every single day. It's why on the 6-month anniversary, it wasn't a celebration for me. It was a celebration for all of us because it's been a heck of a journey. So until tomorrow, cheers.
Cheers.
Sweet.
Oh, crazy.